Welcome back to the Kicks and Picks podcast. Coach Steve here with you. Nick is along with me. Scotty going to have to sit this one out. Got stuck in some traffic on the way back from a work trip, so we brought on Adriano from the Calcio guys. Adriano, how you doing tonight?
Not bad, guys. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure. I think it's my first cap on the show, so hopefully many more to come. And always a pleasure talking culture, especially with two good guys like yourselves.
Appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. So, as you could probably have figured out by now, that we have a Calcio guys guest, Nick and I, no Scotty. It's going to be a Calcio heavy episode, more Serie A than Premier League. Nick and I will touch on the Arsenal Villa game just because that's the big one a little bit later in the show before our locks. But we're going to start in Serie A. Just a quick update on the table. I mean, Inter pretty much running away with things now. 82 points through 31 matches played. 14 up on, 14 up on Milan with 7 to go. So a win this week, and they could potentially lock things up in the Derby della Madonnina in a couple weeks. I'm sure Adriano doesn't want to see that happen. But that's the route it's going right now after their last gasp win against Udinese this past week. Milan's on 68 points, looking pretty safe in second place. Juve 62, Bologna 58, Roma 55. That's the top 5. Then there's Atalanta, one less match played because of the postponement against Fiorentina. They're on 50 points, followed by Napoli on 48, Lazio on 46, and then it's Torino on 44. You have to go all the way down to 10th for Fiorentina on 43 points through 30 matches played. So we'll start at the top, and then we'll get to the relegation battle too, because that is quite interesting this season too. But just to start, I guess we'll ask you, Adriano, just because you're a Milan fan, we could get your impressions on Milan and then also your rivals Inter, who are really, they've been outstanding, but didn't get it done in the Champions League like we thought they would have this season.
Yeah, I mean, listen, for Milan, it's one of these seasons where kind of like last season, every team in Serie A wants to chase that first spot in terms of the big teams there. But last year it was Napoli who kind of ran away with the table, and it seems like as much as we don't like to say it, as rival fans, Inter's kind of running away with the table this year. So, but in terms of Milan's season, so far or up until this point, it's been an up and down season. Obviously, a lot of highs, a lot of lows, but I think they've definitely improved in terms of in the league from last season. We're kind of on par with how we were doing in the Scudetto winning season, a couple of seasons ago. So it's baby steps with this team. I think from last year to this year, Champions League was definitely the only X factor that I think was different in terms of this season. Obviously not being able to progress, going down to Europa, obviously was never the goal, but nevertheless, I think this team has done, decent enough for what they have, the injuries they've incurred and just the overall, run of this league so far this season. It's been a roller coaster of a year, but no matter what, I mean, as a fan, you with the highs and the lows, you're always sticking by them. So that's kind of how I've looked at this season. It's unfortunate, like I said last season, it was Napoli who ran away with it. Lazio was just sitting pretty at second, and they were able to achieve that. I feel like Milan's kind of sort of in that same position where they're sitting duck. They're not going to get first, unfortunately, unless a calamity happens, which maybe we're fingers are crossed and we hope that happens. But we're kind of just sitting duck, in that second spot. And I think even any of the teams that are even below Milan, like you said, Steve, the Juves, the Bolognas, the Romas of the world, they're all kind of fighting, but they know they only can get so far. So I don't know. I guess as a whole, it's been a quote unquote good season. Obviously, would have wanted more. Still a chance at silverware. Being in the Europa League, facing Roma this week. So yeah, just I guess could ask for more, but had to expect what we expected, and we're here.
So I do want to come back to the Champions League in a second, but there's two questions I want to ask you because I know my thoughts on the team, and I know what I feel like we hear here in the States because, big signing for Milan for the United States national team was Pulisic coming over.
Yeah,
I think obviously, a lot of the chatter is very biased, but I think there's 3 people on the show right now that watch this league game in and game out, watch Milan game in and game out. I've been very impressed with him, but more than that, I've been very impressed with all of the new signings Milan have brought in. I think the integration has been faster than I expected, just with the kind of a tweak in formation and different starters week in and week out. So I want your thoughts on that because, you're from Montreal, so you don't maybe have the same glowing eyes on Pulisic as some of the other people we talk to. But before you get to that, I want your thoughts on Pioli, because I feel like Steve and I can speak from Roma and Lazio that, we've had love-hate relationship with our coaches who are no longer there.
Sure.
Pioli is a polarizing figure, I feel like, for Milan fans. He led you to glory a couple of years ago, but now I'm starting to hear that the act may be wearing thin. So would love your thoughts on him, and then would kind of love your overall thoughts on, how they did in the transfer market and how these guys have integrated into the team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in terms of Pioli, it's kind of been one of these things with Pioli. Like when we first got him, before he even got to Milanello, there was already the Pioli out hashtag, right? That was the infamous hashtag that was going around. Milan fans hated the move, didn't want him to come. We felt like we were changing 4 quarters for $1 back in those days, and he was able to definitely surpass, I think, some fans' expectations and what they thought of him as a manager. I think he's grown as a manager too. Obviously, he's never had tremendous success in his past. Obviously, kind of, I don't want to say journeyman type of manager, but he's been around and he's seen Serie A. He knows the league. Obviously, his stint at Fiorentina was obviously memorable. Had some good moments, had some very tough moments to endure. Obviously the passing of Davide story. So we knew we were getting a seasoned manager. Not sure where he would take this team. Because guys, like it or not, we had to endure the banter era that was, a 10-year stretch of disgusting football, of just not Milan Calcio, right? So, he was able to bring us to a height that we hadn't seen in quite some time, and touch a trophy that we haven't touched in a long time in the Scudetto a couple of seasons ago. And I think for that, we're forever grateful for that, for those moments, for that season even. And I think it's been a baby step type of project with him at the helm. From making it back into Champions League to progressing out of the group, to getting to a semifinal, to winning a Scudetto, like I just said. There's been definitely different milestones with Pioli, and it hasn't been perfect by any stretch of the imagination, because I don't think he's a perfect manager at all, and there's very few that you can even say that are quote unquote perfect managers. But for what he's had at his disposal, I think he's done a pretty decent job. I know a lot of fans obviously want him out now, and I'm kind of on the fence. We spoke about it last night. We had Richard Carmen from Serie A sit down, OG in the game and in the Calcio podcasting game, and we kind of had a bit of that discussion amongst ourselves last night. And on the fence, I just don't know if the options or the realistic options out there are legit, concrete, something that you want to restart this whole project, this whole cycle with. Am I a total fan of Pioli with every decision that he makes? No. But has he done good with his Milan? Yeah. So I'm kind of on the fence. I'm going to still stick right now, as we're recording tonight, with Pioli in at least for another season. Just I want to see what he's going to do next season, because if we go out like this, we end ways like this, after not really accomplishing maybe what we entirely wanted, maybe another run at the Scudetto, maybe another deep run in Champions League, try to go a bit out on top, I think would maybe be the ideal situation. But again, we don't know. I think there's a lot of rumors and paper talk and all kinds of stuff like that, so we'll never know until it happens. But my whole thing is yeah, it's fine, you want to kick and scream and or kick, pick, and scream. Now we're on the Kicks and Pick podcast, right? But about getting them out. But at the end of the day, it's who's the realistic option? Right. There's no the big talking point in Italy right now is Thiago Motta, right? He seems to be reinventing the wheel and playing beautiful football with Bologna, and a lot of teams are going to be after him. You read the rumors, maybe he's going to Juve. Is he going to come to Milan? I don't know. So we're not going to get an Ancelotti. We're not. There's no Klopp coming to Milan. There's no Pep coming to Milan. So it really, like, we really have to kind of like weigh the realistic options. And like right now, I can't say like I really know who that could be. So and if I was reading, if any of this news I was seeing today just before we got on about Sadi coming, I mean, I don't want Sadi at Milan. I don't know. I saw a quick report about it
I
before
agree
coming on.
for you.
I don't know. Like, that's, you're trading in $1, you gain 75 cents. You know what I mean? Like, there's not that equal value or more with Sadi, in my opinion. Currently, I'd rather stick with Pioli. He knows the system. He knows the city. He knows the club. He knows his players. Get him some more players. Obviously, Champions League money helps to finish where we're going to finish, or hopefully finish. So,
man, I couldn't agree with you more about the highs, but like you said, it's a lost thing, I think, in modern football to have a coach that stays for 3, 4, 5+ years.
Yeah.
You see it very, very,
Especially
very rarely, especially in Serie A. So to have that continuity, I think, gives you a little bit of a leg up. And we'll get to the second part of my question, but you've seen what Milan can do with some fresh signings. Well, if they can get more, if they make Champions League, well, obviously they're making Champions League again. If they can have another transfer window like this, that's exactly what you want from players that have now been playing together for 3, 4 seasons.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the continuity is a big thing in culture, right? Having that consistency and having that gel of players, and for me, it starts at the top, right? Obviously, after Maldini, leaving, that whole saga, I think that kind of was kind of like a little bit of a bullet wound to Milan fans, because we obviously hold Maldini to a high regard with this club because he is Milan. And again, I wasn't the biggest fan of that, obviously, but we've turned the page, and I think from top to bottom, it's far from perfect, guys. Like, I'm not going to sit here and just boast about Milan just because I'm a fan. Like, if you put on your realistic cap on, you kind of have to like look at it full circle. It's not a perfect club. I think there's places to improve, like any club. But for what we have and what we've done, I think it's been good enough. So obviously we would want more, but it kind of is what it is right now. So but in terms of your second question, Nick, in terms of the signings, I mean, pleasantly surprised by some. Pulisic was an interesting one. Obviously, an upgrade at that right wing position that us Milan fans were so desperately waiting for. We had Salsicha Maker, aka Salo Makers, right on the right hand side. Junior Messias. So we had Suso for so long, and just a revolving door. Casilejo, a revolving door of mediocre players that sometimes came up for a game, sometimes didn't show up. So to have an exciting player, a young player too, still. I don't know how old he is, but he's still still in his mid-20s, so he's still in that range of young, if you want to say. He's been a breath of fresh air on that right hand side. A player that you obviously know of. I mean, we're not blind to what Pulisic has done. Obviously, I'm not in the States. Living here in Montreal, it's a different viewpoint, like you said, Nick. But this is a top player, and I think he's been able to prove it, having one of the better seasons, if not the best season of his life, his career at Milan. It's just been so far a perfect match with him and Milan. So obviously, him staying healthy has been big. I know Pulisic has had a history of not being able to stay onto the pitch, and knock on wood, and put Corny up. He stays healthy for a long time with Milan. But he's one thing that we just even saw last game against Lecce. He's versatile. Like, listen, I don't watch Pulisic when he plays for the national. I never watched Pulisic. Not that I never did, but I'm not up watching U.S. men's national teams games with Pulisic on, and I don't see him that he can play across the front line. Now, seeing that he's at Milan, I can see that he can play pretty much wherever he wants in that front line. Maybe not striker, but from a 10 to out on the wings, he's capable of doing so. So yeah. I mean, his time at Chelsea was a downer. We got him we got him for, in this day and age, in this market, guys, a bargain. And I'm hoping that we can continue that partnership for a long time, because so far so good. But another point that I wanted to add is, and you kind of said it too, Nick, a lot of the purchases have been, hits and rather than misses. And, Ruben Loftus-Cheek has been another one that I really
Unreal.
didn't know. I really did not know what to expect. I didn't really like the move. He was getting the number 8. Obviously the 8 has a special heart and special place in our hearts. Gattuso wore it. Obviously, our boy Tonali had it before he left. But very just pleasantly surprised. I mean, I have nothing more to say but that he's really been able to show. Because again, I don't watch the Premier League week in and week out. I follow a bit, you see, kind of what's going on, but to really follow deep in, I don't. I can't say I do. So he's been really pleasantly, really a big surprise for me. Just him too, being versatile, playing that kind of 10, kind of playing in the mid, in that 8 or 6 spot. Wherever again he needs to play, he has that presence to do so. He's able to score goals, provide assists. I mean, he's. Again, just something we've needed. If our attack is not doing it, as much as we don't want that to happen, Milan fans can kind of rely, quote unquote, on our midfielders to kind of step up. If it be a Loftus-Cheek at the 10, if it be a Pulisic if he's playing at 10, a Benacer, Reindeers, Musa, who's been another, obviously American coming over. That's been huge. So, yeah, man, it's been exciting, because it's a long time that we've had a big transfer window that actually worked. The last time we did that, we spent all kinds of money, and I think we got one quality player out of that in Frank Kessie way back when. So to see, like you said, Pulisic, Loftus-Cheek, Okafor, who's brought in some big moments, in this season. Chukwueze, who's been, again, as of late, kind of waking up and kind of getting into the rhythm of things. Tijani Reinders, another one in the midfield. He looks amazing when he's on, So Musa, also like I named. So there's been, it's just been an interesting year, like I said earlier. But it's just a shame that there couldn't have been maybe more coming out of this season. But again, at the end of the day, making Champions League, hopefully progressing in Europa League, having a chance at some sort of silverware this season, I think is a big plus for Milan.
Yeah, I think you made a great point about, the manager and the continuity, Nick, right? We don't see that very often. When teams cycle through a manager every 2 to 3 seasons, a new project starts. I've seen it at Roma plenty of times. A new project starts, new players are needed because the style of play changes, and then they want their own guys to come in. And, Pioli's been there now. This is, I believe, his 5th season, and he's won a Scudetto, which Milan hadn't won in a long time, right? And then he's over here finishing 2nd place behind a very strong Inter side. Obviously, You'd like it to be closer than, 14 points right now, and maybe at least try to avoid them clinching it in the San Siro against you, obviously. But because that, as a rival fan, always leaves a bitter taste in your mouth. But,
absolutely,
at this point, you can concede they're winning the Scudetto, and being comfortably 2nd is not a bad thing, right? As long as you can take that next step forward next season, if he does stick around. Like Lazio did the opposite this year, right? They didn't invest heavily enough to
Napoli
be able to
too.
compete in the Champions League.
We
Napoli,
have to pick on me. Napoli too.
Yeah, well, I was comparing more to Lazio because the coach
Right.
stayed the same, right? Napoli lost the coach, and that changed a lot for them. But Giroud probably leaves. I'm hearing MLS possibly for him, so that's where you need to invest some of that Champions League money. Is probably at striker. But I mean, I remember looking at the schedule early on. Roma played Milan in the 3rd match, and I was thinking, they've got a whole bunch of new players they've got to integrate. Maybe they're a little bit vulnerable early in the season. Instead, they came out flying, and here they are, very comfortable in 2nd. And like you said, to have a market like that where everybody pretty much fits in to some extent and is contributing is very, very rare. Every club tends to miss on 1 or 2 signings this summer when they go out and buy 5, 6, 7 new players. And it's been really good work. So you almost have to think, like, if Pioli's been able to do this season, is the devil better than whatever you bring in if it ends up being Saudi, right? Or somebody like that. Like, what's the alternative? And then maybe those players don't fit his play style. They don't perform the same way. That I think is the flip side of it from a Milan perspective for the people that want him out. And Pulisic, 24 years old. I mean, I like him because he's American. Obviously, he is our best hope to bring some football and glory to the U.S., whatever that may be outside of CONCACAF. And 10 goals and 6 assists is career highs in both.
Yeah.
And just to speak to the volumes of how he's finishing goals, his XG is only 5.7. So he's scoring some real bangers to be able to put in 10 on a 5.7 XG.
Well, the first game of the season was against Bologna, and Nick, cover your ears for this one, but he was right off the bat. He was he went first at bat and he hit a home run right away.
Mm-hmm.
The banger that he scored against Bologna, match day 1. We were all excited. Obviously, new season for Milan fans, like we're saying right now. Some new players, and Pulisic was able to get off the mark, right away. So for that, for me, it was able to show that. The lights weren't too bright. The stadium wasn't too loud for him. The shirt wasn't heavy enough for him. All these cliches, as you want to say, he was able to embrace it and move forward and really take on that role. And he's pretty much owned that right wing spot for a majority of this season. Obviously, with some integration with Chukwueze, if it be him or anybody else, it's kind of been his position to let go of. So. Just incredible.
It could be a case too. I was just going to say, how many managers did he go through at Chelsea besides the injuries, right? How many different managers did he have to try to perform for? Like the first season he went there, 9 goals and 4 assists in under 1,800 minutes. It's pretty solid for a 20-year-old kid. And then injuries, like you mentioned, and then a couple managerial changes, and you got to impress a new guy. It was probably like a breath of fresh air coming to Milan, knowing he was wanted. The team brought him in to be an important piece, and like you said, once you hit that home run, the first at bat, so to speak, like the confidence is soaring.
Absolutely.
Yeah, same thing with Loftus-Cheek, right? Just being able to play game in and game out, not really worry about, hey, is one bad performance or one bad half gonna take away from all the good that I've done. I think you both made fantastic points. And in terms of the transfer market and Pioli, just one thing I want to say, like, the issue is not with the offense. They have the second most goals scored in the league, right? So, I mean, yes, you're going to have to replace Giroud. He's 35. He's probably going to MLS, but
that's going to hurt. Hurt.
Here's the reality. Inter has scored 15 more goals, and they've given up 20 less goals. So Milan's giving up over a goal a game. That's not something you traditionally associate with Milan. And there's been injuries. There's been injuries to the goalkeeper. There's been red cards and suspension. It's a number of reasons, but at least if you look at the squad as a whole and you look what they've done this year and the age of the squad, you can see a clear path to like, hey, this is where we need to focus on. These are the positions we need to upgrade to move forward. And I don't know that every other team around them has that. I mean, I think the foundation for this Milan team is fantastic moving forward.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, every summer, or anytime the transfer window opens, but predominantly in the summer, it's always rumors after rumor after rumor, right? Who's leaving, who's not coming, who's going to come, this, that, the other thing. It's a painful time, obviously, for fans. You want to keep your top players, you want to be consistent, and you want to keep that foundation, like you said, Nick, and move forward because. Like we know, guys, having that strong foundation and that continuity, not only with the manager, but even with the core, cornerstones of a team, sometimes are hard to come by. So, certain teams have windows in terms of having that success, right? I don't want to say Milan's is closing or it's just open or we're halfway. I don't know, but it's there. We got to keep that in mind, right? There's windows in terms of winning in this league and just in all sports, really. So, it's something to build on. And I just, like you said, Giroud possibly leaving. The rumors looking like MLS, LAFC. I don't know. Until I see a definitive, transfer out, I'll kind of believe it because. He's really brought in so much to Milan, even at his older age. It's been incredible to watch. Really loved Giroud. Really loved his time and his continuing time until he, like I said, officially departs, if and when he does. So, one thing's for sure, he's definitely broken that number 9 curse at Milan. We had a flurry of guys wearing that infamous number 9 after Inzaghi, Pippo Inzaghi, and he's finally been able to take off that curse off that shirt for at least when he wears it. So the memories are going to always be there. He's delivered some huge memories and huge moments in big times. So that's going to be a tough one. Now, who do we go and get if that does be the thing? Is a whole other talking point. Obviously, Zirkzee from Bologna is a big talking point. We'll see. I don't know. I'm excited just to see how the season ends in terms of the league, in terms of Europa, and then we can worry about, Mercato and all that madness come the summertime.
Yeah, so good stuff on Milan there. Lots of great insight. Let's move down the table just a little bit to the race for the Champions League spot. This year, that carrot of fifth place being a Champions League spot is looking more and more likely for Serie A. They have pretty good chance based on the European results. It would have probably helped if Inter had stuck around the Champions League for a little bit longer, almost would have guaranteed it. But, with Roma and Milan playing head-to-head, there's going to be at least one team in the semifinals of the Europa League. We'll see what Atalanta could do against Liverpool. Tough task. And then Fiorentina in the Conference League gives us some hope of gaining some more coefficient points there. So right now, we know top four will be Champions League, potentially top five. In the race right now, I mean, Juve probably is safe in third place at 62, but then you have Bologna on 58, Roma 55, Atalanta 50 with a match in hand. Looking like the three teams most likely fighting for one, maybe two spots. What do you make of that race? Bologna has been outstanding, obviously, under Thiago Motta, like you said, reinventing the wheel, so to speak, over there. What have been your thoughts on them? Maybe a little bit of Roma with De Rossi taking over for Mourinho at the midseason point, and then Atalanta Gasperini has his club hanging around yet again. I mean, they've become a fixture fighting for top four really now for got to be 6-7 seasons.
Yeah, no, it's been incredible. I think every year we always say it. The race for top four is the best one yet. It seems like every season, these past couple of seasons, we've been saying that, right? At least on our end, on our show. Yep. So it's been fantastic to watch. Obviously, just as a Calcio fan or just as a Serie A fan in general, like you take off. You put your team to a side and just watch like the beauty of our league. Even though there's a lot of faults, just the core beauty of this league. It's so exciting to watch. Week in, week out. We always say it. There's no easy games in Serie A, and every week we get proven that. So in terms of Bologna, yeah, like what hasn't been said about this Bologna team? I don't know if people are still living under a rock with this Bologna under Motta, but it's been incredible. He's brought out qualities and performances out of players that I don't think many other people would have thought of that would have happened. Zirkzee to name one, obviously, he's been just incredible, young talent. Coming from Bayern, he didn't think he was an out-and-out number 9 striker that needed somebody to play off of. Guys, he's able to play by himself up there. I think he's proven that, scoring goals. I hope any injury that does happen or doesn't happen doesn't linger with him, but he's been an incredible force. Orsolini, again, coming out of the woodworks, honestly, really, because he's been an interesting player, and I know our boy here, Nick Diani, loves some Orsolini, but sure. He had some hype like way back when, like when he was first coming up, like he was supposed to. I don't want to say he was supposed to be the next Italian star, but he was up there with a young Italian, being a young Italian prospect. And obviously that didn't really go according to plan, but I think still at his, 26, I believe, I don't know, somewhere in that mid-20 range, 27, he's, I'm not going to say he's at the end of his prime or whatever, but he's there, right? Like if he continues like this, if, Spalletti takes him to the Euros and he maybe performs there, like who knows, like, you know what I mean? So I've loved what he's been able to do. Getting 10 goals in this league is never an easy thing for how defensive, and tactic oriented this league is. As a winger, getting 10 goals, it's been impressive for him. Obviously, Luis Ferguson, Calafiori, the list goes on with Bologna, guys. It's been really fantastic to watch. Thiago Motta at the helm. We've said it on our show many times, praising Motta, but if we look back, like when he first became a manager, like and came onto the scene, like it was like not pretty to watch. Like it wasn't anything to write home about. Like he really improved and really grew as a young manager. So that's been impressive because we always like to see these young Italian coaches succeed. If it be in our league or abroad, and he was able to so far do that. Now the big question is, like, does he stay or does he go? Obviously, a lot of reports saying that he'll potentially go, and maybe that Bologna squad gets totally picked apart, or maybe he pulls was it Jabi Alonso at Leverkusen and stays another year, which I think would be huge because I'm on the fence of him really leaving, if I'm honest, just because at the end of the day, as much as we want to ooh and ah about all this, it's still a small sample size, guys. One season, okay, you're able to do it one season, but can you do it for 2, 3, consistently with a team, and then like a mid-table team to go over to like one of the top teams in historically in this league, so because the Bologna Piazza and a Milano Piazza or a Juve Piazza or even any of the Rome Piazza is not the same is not the same level of pressure of expectation. Those shirts and that touch line are heavy to wear or to stand behind. So I'm excited to see what happens with him and with this team. Obviously, with the 5th Champions League spot, we even again spoke about it similarly last night or 2 nights ago, on our show, and who's gonna surpass who and who's gonna stay in the top 4, potentially top 5 race. And I think currently, just the way it's been going, I think it's gonna be either Bologna or Roma or both. I think those 2 teams are gonna stick around there. I think the fight will still be like interesting to watch. Obviously, Atalanta, the game in hand, they win that game. They're only 2 points back of Roma, I believe. I think it's Napoli and Lazio around there too. And 7 games or in my eyes, it's 7 more finals, right? So how can these teams end the season? We'll see. But I think for the most part, it's going to be a Bologna Roma fighting for that 4 or 5 and getting into Champions League one way or another. But just to bounce off onto Roma, under De Rossi, it's been again something beautiful to watch. Obviously, loving De Rossi as a player, seeing him go back home and work some magic with this club has been fantastic to watch. And listen, you're replacing or you're filling the shoes of one of the most spoken about top managers there's been in this sport, in Mourinho, and those are tough shoes to fill.
Yeah.
And it took a guy like De Rossi to come in and really take the job by its horns and really steer Roma out of kind of a downward spiral that they were going into, right? So it's going to be no easy task for Milan come tomorrow, as we're recording this on Wednesday, or just in these home and away fixtures in the Europa League. But kudos to De Rossi. The spirit, the grinta, the fight. He knows what it takes to win at Roma, right? And or to do well, or to really show these players, what it means to wear the Roma shirt. Because sometimes you need that realization what it means and where you are, guys. You're not at, I don't know, Spezia. You're not at Empoli. You're wearing the Roma red. So. It's something to fascinate about because it's really amazing. He's really steered the direction. He's brought in qualities out of players that were having a bit of a down year into a better direction. Pellegrini being obviously the main one in my eyes. It's been fantastic to watch what he's been able to do. So yeah, it's exciting. That's why we love the game. That's why we love this league, and for stories like this. So yeah, man, just excited to see how everything pans out.
Yeah. And you mentioned, Motta's first couple spells as manager not being pretty. De Rossi, when he was in Serie B with Spal, I think he lasted like maybe 10 matches, and it was a disaster. And, I don't know what he did in that time in between. I think from a Roma standpoint, I thought it was part PR hire just because you're letting Mourinho go. You need somebody who's going to not
Nothing
get torn
to lose
apart
at that point
by the fan base, right? And it's turned into a stroke of genius at the same time. And I think he's on like a 6-month contract. I think he's done more than enough to get himself back there again next year.
No doubt.
Champions League or no Champions League.
I think sorry to cut you off. I think I know I didn't get to speak to Johnny about it, or we haven't really discussed it at length. Well, we have, but not really to a certain length. But I think he deserves, like you said, Steve, more time. I want to see what he can do in a full year. Maybe it craps out, and maybe this is just a high and a run of form, maybe. But I want to see it to believe it, because I don't want there to be like that if or what could have been with De Rossi. Because again, young manager in the game. Obviously, we're going to root for him because he's Italian, but I think there's no better place for him but Rome. It's very, very clear. He's able to connect to the fans. He's able to block out the noise. He has some top players at his club. Again, if they can stay healthy, is a different story. But I'm intrigued to see how that plays out for Roma, to be honest.
And sacking a club icon is very different than sacking any other manager, right? Like the backlash there, especially with he's turned the season around. Where they ultimately finish, to me, it doesn't matter, because he has turned the season around. He's given these players an identity. He's given life back to a guy like Pellegrini. I think Dybala still looks, good. He looks happier to me. I mean, I don't know if that makes sense or not, but I don't think his performances, he's still the guy, but he just seems like he's enjoying this a little bit more. The question I have for you guys, we talked about it. Steve and I talked about it last week, right before the derby, that Roma have a brutal schedule to end the season. Lazio don't. I think Lazio have the easiest remaining schedule of any team. Let's call it in the hunt. I don't think they can make fifth place. It would take a miracle, but any team to make, fifth, sixth, seventh. I'm looking at Napoli right now. Napoli's got a pretty tough schedule. They face Roma, they face Bologna, they face Fiorentina. I want your guys' perspective. Would you rather have an quote unquote easier schedule like Lazio, where really, in my mind, they could win 6 out of 7 games? I'm not saying they will, but they could win 6 out of their 7 games.
Yeah.
Or do you think it's potentially better for a team like Roma, a team like Napoli, to play your direct rivals head to head, where, if you get a result, if you get 3 points, that's a 6-point swing. That's 3 points your opponent didn't get. I feel like it's a weird question to ask, but just kind of wanted your, do you think that almost gives them a leg up versus, a team that has the pressure of beating teams they're supposed to beat?
I'll let Steve go first on this one. I feel like I've been talking too much.
I guess the advantage of playing the direct rivals, like you said, it could be a 6-point swing. It makes you turn up for every match, right? Like Roma turned up for Lazio last week. They were there, defended well. Tail of two halves, Lazio did outplay them in the second half, but Roma was in the lead and they managed the match. They only had 1 shot on target. And that was a big win for Roma, because under Mourinho, they had a very difficult time beating direct rivals head to head. De Rossi so far is a win against them, a draw against Fiorentina, and we'll see how it goes against. They have Napoli, Bologna, Juve, and Atalanta still on the schedule for the 7 matches, and 4 of the 7. So that's a pretty tough run in, and they're all in a row too. They're all one after another, and if they do get past Milan, they'll be Europa League mixed in there against most likely Leverkusen, which is going to be very tough too. So I think that's the tricky part about having all the direct rivals, is if you advance in Europa League, which is an if, because Milan is the slight favorite going into it, then the schedule is tough on the weekends, and it's also tough in the midweek for at least probably 2 of those midweeks mixed in there, where you can't maybe rotate as heavily as you might against like an Empoli or a Salernitana or something. But at the same time, it's a lot easier, I think, to mentally stay on top of things in the league, because if you're playing Salernitana and Hellas and Frosinone and you're playing Leverkusen during the midweek in a scenario where you advance, then maybe you turn off a little bit on the weekend and maybe you drop points you shouldn't drop. So I guess that's the other side of it. But if you do lose to Bologna, there goes 4th place. If you do lose to Atalanta, maybe 5th place goes too. So it's a tricky situation. It's a good question, because
it's fascinating.
I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer, and it'd be interesting to know behind closed doors what the managers and players would say about that. Because sometimes I think the better players, especially like the Dybalas of the world and the Lukakus, I think they're going to be more motivated sometimes against those bigger clubs where they can't just go into cruise control sometimes.
Absolutely. It's a tough question for sure. I think it also really depends on the club. Like certain teams, you see, especially in this league. We're speaking Serie A, so we're going to focus on that. But especially in this league, there's certain teams that don't play up to their potential when they're playing against weaker opponents, quote unquote weaker opponents. I'll always say that
happened this weekend, right? With
right,
Atalanta and with
and
Bologna the
Cagliari,
weekend before with
yeah,
Roma, right? Like, yeah,
exactly. So I'll always say there's no easy games in Serie A, and I know Milan. They have a habit of playing down, which I'll never understand in any sport, really, guys. If it be Calcio, if it be NFL, NHL, MLB, whatever you want, guys, NBA, it doesn't matter. Like when you play down to opponents where you should be winning comfortably or should be winning, just winning is enough. It baffles me every time, and I know Milan has had a history of kind of doing that. So I think it really depends. I would rather, play the best teams or play the rival teams, and if I had to really choose, because it kind of shows where you're at, like in your journey of getting somewhere in the season. If it be a top four finish, if it be a scudetto, if it be progression in a European competition. I rather, like, you got to beat the best to be the best type of mentality. Like I kind of swing that a bit more that way, just because it brings, like I said, it just brings out more in the atmosphere. It puts a lot more into the game, into the matchup itself. Like April 22nd, like it's the Derby della Madonnina, that Bologna Roma game. Like that's huge, guys. Like if it be Roma, Empoli, Frosinone, and they would play, Salernitana and Sassuolo, like for the progression of this season, like I don't know, I don't know where they would finish, but like playing that Bologna game, like the Atalanta game, like Steve said, like these are big games. So like there's no better time but to wake up for these types of games. So that's kind of the way I swing and see it in terms of that question.
You kicked off the show by saying it. It's year after year, it's the most fascinating top four race. It's the most interesting league to watch. It's the most unpredictable. Where Steve and I have now said it, going on our third year on the show. We're trying to string some bets together. You can't rely on one team week in and week out. It just hasn't happened because of the inconsistency. Obviously, with some exceptions, right? But top four, the race for Europe, it's been nuts. So let's put a bow on that. Adri, gun to your head, fourth, fifth place. Who do you think are taking those spots?
Like who's finishing fourth and who's finishing fifth?
It doesn't have to be in any particular. Just which two teams do you think are going to finish in those quote unquote Champions League spots?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's going to be Bologna Roma. You guys can duke it out to see who wants to finish where, but it's going to be, in my eyes, it's going to be those two teams. The game in hand, with Atalanta is still interesting to me, because I never like to see that game in hand, like the Milan Scudetto year when Inter had that game in hand all the way till the end of the season. Where it was like, but the game in hand, but the end of the game in hand. So if I was any of those clubs, it's always something to look at, because like I said, currently, if they have that as a win against Fiorentina, they're 2 points back instead of 5 behind Roma. So if you get a different perspective, we're singing a different tune, right? So it's I'm going to still stick with those two, just because it's the two teams, like we just said earlier, I've been playing beautiful football in Bologna, and the De Rossi story that's kind of flipped over this Roma onto a better side has been impressive and interesting to watch. So I'm going to stick to those two teams. Any fan of those two teams can say where they want them to finish, but I think the big thing of the potential top 5 instead of top 4, like we always say, who's going to make top 4? If this top 5 thing is like becomes a reality, it could be interesting. And God knows, like, I don't know if this is true. I was speaking to our Nick on our show. If miraculously Atalanta wins the Europa League, do we get 6 spots? Like that, that's, for me, it would be crazy. So
I would think so, just because if Roma had won Europa League last year, Italy would have gotten the 5th spot. So I would think, in theory, it would happen. I don't know if
there's a cap on that or what. So I don't know, but could you imagine like 6 Italian teams in Champions League next year? Like we might lose in every possible final, but hey, we had 6 teams in Champions, so it'd be cool to watch.
Yeah. So just to wrap, we have to look at the bottom of the table quick, just because we talk about teams dropping points to teams they shouldn't. But the teams that they shouldn't are in this crazy battle as it is. I mean, you go from, I'd say, Cagliari in 13th place on 30 points. Then you have Lecce on 29, Udinese 28, Empoli 28, Verona 27, the last safe team as of this moment. Then it's Frosinone on 26 and Sassuolo on 25. The only team guaranteed to be relegated right now is Salernitana, who's been awful in 15 points. I mean, what do you make of this relegation race? Do you have two teams that you think go down with Salernitana? I mean, I never thought I'd see Sassuolo down there with the way they've been so consistent in the league for the past decade or so now. Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting.
Yeah, no, like listen, guys, like we say every year about the top half of the table. I think even the bottom half of the table, it's always a crazy battle, last match day type of thing. I still have the one where Empoli was playing Inter a couple of seasons ago, and they went down. That post that they hit, I think it was Ciccio Caputo or whoever it was. So it's these moments, these games where. And at this business end of the season are really crucial, not only for the top teams you're trying to get into Europe, but even the teams in the relegation battle to try to, stay up for salvation. So, it's a shame for Salernitana, obviously having some interesting moments, last year and such in Serie A. But, three teams have to go down, unfortunately, as if we like it or not. The Sassuolo one is interesting. Obviously, they have an interesting history, going through the ranks, getting into Serie A and staying there for quite a long time now. Again, I don't know the exact number. I forget the exact
10
number.
10 years or something like that, right?
At least, because we're talking we're 2024, 2014. Yeah, something like that. I don't really remember exactly, but I know it's been a good stretch of time where they've been able to sustain Serie A, year in and year out. So
yeah, and never really be in danger either, I feel like.
Exactly, right? Like kind of on that left hand of the table, as we say, from 1 to 10, that the left side of the table, like they say in Italy. But yeah, I don't know. It's for them, it's a tricky one. But before we got on air, we were kind of discussing it. Maybe they need, as much as it pains, people to say or fans to say or accept, like maybe they need that refresh by going down to Serie B. It's one of those things that you obviously don't want to go down, but it could maybe be a blessing in disguise for a team like Sassuolo. We saw Genoa go through it. We didn't maybe really want Genoa to go down, a historic team in this league, the oldest team in Italy. They go down. They get that bit of a refresh in terms of management, in terms of coach. Obviously, Gilardino has been another one under the radar. Their players have stepped up. So, and now they're in, what are they in 11th, 12th, something like that. So,
yeah,
it's something maybe you need as a club that's kind of going in a bit of a downward spiral. Obviously, having their best player injured for this last stretch of time in Mimo Berardi hasn't been ideal, but at the same time, you can't depend on one player to kind of save your season. And it's a tricky one. Who goes down? Again, another very difficult question for me, because there's even another team in there like an Udinese that has a shot or a betting odds that they might go down, right? So, could you imagine, talking a couple of seasons ago? Oh yeah, in 2024 it's going to be Sassuolo and Udinese going down alongside Salernitana. Like, we wouldn't be saying these types of things, right? These are teams that have had somewhat of quote unquote success, like in their own right and in their own standards. But yeah, I don't know. I'm torn a bit, but it looks likely that it could be maybe a Sassuolo, and maybe that, like I said, that blessing in disguise can help them in a positive way.
So you brought up Udinese. I want to just to agree with what you're saying about Sassuolo.
What's the odds on that? What's the odds on that, guys?
I just had them up here.
We were speaking about it before. I forget.
Yeah. So for whatever reason, Hellas is not listed here, even though they're in 17th place, which boggles my mind. I don't know why they're missing, but Frosinone is minus 135, Empoli plus 225, Udinese plus 300, Lecce plus 350, Cagliari plus 500. Sassuolo is missing. I had him on my phone here. Sassuolo's even money.
So for me, Udinese is the pick for value at plus 300. I know they're just outside of the relegation zone, but they've never gotten going. And check out this schedule down the stretch. They have Roma this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
They have Bologna in 2 weeks. They have Napoli right after that. So those are 3 very difficult games. But the 4 remaining, Hellas, Lecce, Empoli, Frosinone. So they're
There you
in
go. That's
6-point games the
their
majority
season.
of this year,
Yep.
the rest of this year. So to me, man, I mean, I think if they drop 9 points to the big teams that I mentioned, which is likely, and you drop 1 or 2 of those head-to-heads, you're cooked. So I think plus 300 is an exceptional value for a team that's only safe by 2 points right now.
Place your bets now, guys. Listen to these guys. These guys are the experts, not me. But put your money on Udinese going down if you're not a fan of Udinese. But yeah, no. Listen, I was thinking about it too. Just even looking at the table, even before we caught on or what have you. But Udinese has been playing some like disgusting football this season. Like it's as Nick cracks open another one. No, but they've been playing some really brutal football. And again, a team that had moments in seasons past and currently just where they're sitting, it's been similar to like we were speaking about Sassuolo. Change of managers, players gone. Udinese. Abeto leaves. Delofeo injured. We might never see him on a pitch again. Type of deal. Samardzic has been their best player, obviously, but he's been
on his way out.
Maybe on his maybe on his way out, maybe on his way in. Who knows? But at the end of the day, it's like it just hasn't been enough. So, man, I really don't know, but yeah, it seems like it could potentially be. Udinese, Sassuolo, going down with Salernitana.
Yeah, that schedule stuff. I looked at a few of the schedules. There are other teams with some big head-to-heads in terms of teams that are fighting for something near the top of the table.
Okay.
To me, the safest looks like Lecce. I mean, they're already 3 points up, and they have a bunch of teams below them, but they have a lot of those like mid-table type teams after they play Napoli and Atalanta. So that usually is useful because those mid-table type teams, those last 3-4 matches, don't have much to play for. But yeah, I mean, Udinese, they haven't been playing well. They've flirted with relegation for a couple seasons now, and at plus 300, you're right, Nick. I think if you're going to put money on somebody, that's where the value is because they don't play nice football, like Adreano said. And I don't know if they beat all those or any of those sides that they have coming up in terms of like the Romas of the world. So we'll see. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah,
for sure.
And like we said about earlier, like would you rather face bottom teams and for the top teams that we were naming, right? Like, would you rather face like your direct rival or your or weak, like quote unquote weaker opposition? Like, I wonder if we flip that question to these relegation teams, like where, like, is it the same answer? I would think so, right? Like,
your destiny's in your hands, right? You beat these teams that are there, you save yourself. So they've got it all.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
All right, Adriano, just last question before we get you out of here. I mean,
Sure.
I based on your thoughts of, I think I can guess where you're going to go, but maybe you'll surprise us here. What's your biggest surprise in Serie A this year and your biggest disappointment? It can be a team, a player, a manager, wherever you want to go, but what has been your favorite thing and what has really let you down?
Wow, that's not the question I thought you were going to ask. I thought we were going to say, is it going to be Milan or Roma advancing out of the Europa League quarters? But hey, you know what? I'm here for the curveballs tonight. But biggest surprise, I don't know. I guess I'm going with the cop-out answer in Bologna. Like it's really
that's fair.
It's got to be, I think, right?
It's the easiest answer to name, but like at the same time, it's like I don't know. Like, what else are you going to really say? Like, you're going to really have to dig deep further than that. And that's not saying that we don't know anything about any other team story, but like, I think just the most prevalent one has been Bologna. Obviously, having some ties to Montreal, with the ownership, Joey Saputo. So it hits home a bit for us here in Montreal, but. We've said enough about them, but it's really that story has been kind of the most prevalent one, and in terms of surprise that's really been obviously we spoke about it earlier about the Milan transfers that have kind of surprised me. Like I was able to name those, and I think that's been a big thing. What I don't know, like what else can surprising. I'm trying to think. Like for me, that's kind of really where I'll
Fair
lie.
enough.
Biggest disappointment. Just the for me, the fall of Napoli has been a painful one to watch.
Bad for the league.
Yeah,
I feel like it
bad
is, honestly.
Sure. I mean, I don't know. It just for me, it's tough to watch that. Like, like them or hate them, and everybody can have their own opinion on any rival or just Napoli in general. But it's just been a tough one to watch. Mazzio is Napolitan. He supports Napoli, and just you can't even banter anymore. Like it's
Yeah.
just straight up like, see, Tio, you saw the score. Like, yeah, what do you want me to do? Like, fuck Napoli, whatever. So it's one of those things where it's a tough one to swallow. It's something that's it's disappointing to watch because you know what, last season, guys, they were on top of the world and rightfully so. They deserve their moment. So for that, it's been tough to watch. Again, I know I'm gonna probably. I brought you up with the Bologna, Nick, but to bring you a bit more down to ground, Lazio too has been interesting for me, right?
Sure.
So, just as a watching from the outside in, like as like a neutral, like it's another one that's been disappointing because again, I think as much as people don't want to maybe agree with it, like I do think they have some tools to work with that are of somewhat of quality. Obviously, they lost their biggest tool and the most, handy tool in SMS, obviously, but not being able to reinvest maybe according to what they should have hurt. And just the overall performances by their top players at times hasn't been up to par, right? You can blame the manager, you can blame upper management, you can blame whoever you want, but the product on the field hasn't been up to par this season. So that's another one that's been kind of disappointing to watch. I don't know. Like for me, yeah, I guess it's really those things. Player wise, I don't know. Vlahovic, I would like to bust our Knicks chops on anything Juve, but he's another one that's up in the air for me. Like in terms of
yet
consistency.
somehow I'm looking at it and he's second in the league in goals, which is like insane
and that's fine.
to me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like listen, he had his moments, but it's easy to be second, in the couple Canoniere race when you're scoring, 3 a game against Salernitana, right?
Yes.
That's it's
and scoring's down this year, just generally. Like the strikers are not scoring. Plain and simple.
Listen, and it's no knock. I don't want it to be like a direct shot. It's all in fun, but it's just like I think if I was a Juve fan or if any of us were Juve fans, the expectation would have definitely been higher for a guy like Vlahovic. Especially with the amount of money that they spent on him. You would need or want more out of a guy like him. Like, who's third in that list? Giroud?
Yeah.
With 13?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And this is a guy that everybody wants to kind of write off and, he's too old, this and that. We got him for barely anything. He's third on the list in the scoring charts in Italy. And again, that's not to toot my own horn or Milan's horn, but it just goes to show you, it's not all about, the money you spend and all that type of stuff. So disappointing in terms of like maybe the overall productivity, not productivity, but like more for me, it's consistency with Vlahovic. And
fair enough.
I know on our show we kind of agree with it, but like I don't know if you guys do or not, but like him, for me, it's all up here. It's all mental. Like I think he's a bit weak mentally as a number 9.
Yeah.
If he can brush that up, because listen, guys, the talent is there. Like,
still young.
Still young. The talent is definitely there. There's no denying all that. But it's for what you want and what you expect. I think maybe a bit more consistency would be beneficial on his end. But yeah, that's kind of how I've seen it. Again, guys, it's been a hell of a Serie A season. It's unfortunate that it's going to be the Snakes in Inter taking it. All love to all our Interisti friends, but it always pains us to see that. And I would hope that it doesn't happen, obviously, on the Derby, that they win the Scudetto, because that's going to burn Milan fans for years to come. But we'll see, man. It's, let the culture on the pitch do the talking rather than us across the pond.
All right. Thank you, Adriano. It's been a great time, great chat. And before we let you
Absolutely.
go, just let everybody know where they can find your work, the Calcio guys' work, and everything you guys are doing.
Yeah, man. Listen, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure and honor to chat with you for this. What has been almost an hour here going on, and sorry for speaking so much, but when we speak about Calcio, it's just
You're
like
the talent, brother.
it's as if we're at the bar, right?
Yeah.
Shooting the shit, grabbing a coffee, and talking Calcio. So I really do appreciate you guys giving me the chance to come on tonight. But before where you can follow me, guys, definitely give these guys a follow. Kicks and Picks Pod. Two great gentlemen. Three. I haven't met the other one, Scotty, but two great gentlemen here tonight, doing great work with a betting angle. Something that not a lot of podcasts are doing, especially in the cultural space. So give these guys a follow before anything. But for us, it's at the Cultural Guys on all socials. We're just a weekly cultural podcast, talking pretty much everything Serie A. We each hold different clubs dear to our hearts. Myself being a Milan fan, my co-host Nick, Juve fan, and the infamous Johnny being both a Roma and Napoli fan. You have to tune in to kind of understand what that's all about. But just like I said, a weekly cultural show talking everything Serie A, Azzurri, international football. Definitely give us a follow on all socials at the Cultural Guys, and for all the audio versions of our podcast, basically anywhere you find the podcast, you can find the Cultural Guys. And for any clips or any lives that we do on YouTube, subscribe there. Like the videos, comment, subscribe, and rate the podcast 5 stars, because all these algorithms and all this stuff does do something at the end of the day for small podcasts like ourselves. So
we're trying to figure it out ourselves, brother. That's for sure.
Exactly. So like I said, follow these guys, follow us at the Cultural Guys, and let's just continue to build this cultural community in a positive way, because the camaraderie that it comes with it, collabing with other podcasts is just so amazing, at least in my eyes. So let's continue to do that, and by doing so, you gotta follow, you gotta like, you gotta do all these types of things. So man, just appreciate the time on tonight, guys.
Listen, we can't thank you enough. Appreciate you coming on. For anybody that just listened to that whole segment, obviously you see just a glimpse of what you get with Adriano, with the Calcio Guys. I mean, these guys they're diehards and they're knowledgeable. And for as awesome as your podcast is, Steve and I are big fans. We listen weekly. We've both had the pleasure of being on the show, obviously. So we thank you for that. For as great as your show is, you guys are even better people. So we can't thank you enough for that. The three of you are really fantastic. I think we're blessed to call you guys friends, and we thank you again for coming on with us tonight.
No, absolutely, man. Listen, that means a lot, right? Because as much as you don't need to hear all these types of like praises, but like when it does come, I think it just adds to the camaraderie that these platforms can do. There's a lot of negativity out on social media, guys, and when there's positive things like this, I think it goes a long way, and it trumps any negativity that's out there. So listen, we hope to do it again. Our DMs are always open for you guys, and I know it's the same, vice versa. So again, continue doing the great job that you guys are doing, and man, just for Steve, I guess Forza Milan for tomorrow, but we'll see how all that plays out. Come after next week. So
cool. Good luck to you both again. Thank you, Adriano. Really appreciate it, brother. Have a great night.
Thanks so much, guys. Ciao, you guys too. Thank you so much.
Ciao.
Ciao.
All right, Nick. So great Calcio chat. A little longer than I think we anticipated, so we're not going to linger too much in the Premier League. In fact, let's get to we'll go over the lines quick, and I think we have a pick in this game, and we can just throw it right out there when we get to the end of it. So the big one this weekend is Arsenal hosting Aston Villa. Arsenal, big-time favorites at home at the Emirates, -350, draw line +500, Villa +800. The over 3.5 is set at +120, while the under is -155. It's kind of like one of those over 3 matches when you look at the lines a little more closely. Villa draw no bet is still +600. Their double chance is +265. Arsenal minus a goal and a half is -135. Villa getting a goal and a half is -105. I mean, this is kind of like one of those matches for Villa where it's big for both teams in the sense that Arsenal, level with Liverpool on 71, 1 point ahead of City. Villa level with Tottenham on 4th place, which is the guaranteed Champions League place. EPL hoping to get a 5th Champions League place, but no guarantees there. So, Arsenal's looking at it from one perspective of staying at the top. Villa's looking maybe to hopefully just keep pace with Spurs. What do you make of it? I mean, Villa, big favorite to home for a reason.
Yeah.
Do they get the job done? I mean,
just correct me if I'm wrong before I go off on my slight tangent here. Our pick is that it will be the Podlock, right?
I believe that's what we agreed on. Yeah.
Okay. Here's where I'm at. Arsenal is a favorite. They're at home. They should be a favorite. I don't think these numbers are correct. I think this spread is a little bit too large. This is what it all comes down to. This is one of Arsenal's hardest games for the rest of the year. I'll say the same thing I said about Arsenal in the Champions League. And we saw that, yes, they got a result, right? They got the draw against Bayern, heavily favored in that game. Not, odds not too dissimilar to this. I'm at the point with Arsenal where they still need to prove it to me. They need to prove that they can close something out, whether that's the league title, whether that's progression in the Champions League, whatever. They're a great story. They're a great team. They're young. They're energetic. They're playing about as well as they can. But this isn't going to be the cakewalk that a minus 350 suggests. That's my really, really strong opinion on this one. And I think you agree, but would love any thoughts before we just kind of give out the play.
Yeah, I think it's a big number. I was shocked when I pulled up the lines and I was writing up our outline just how big the number was. I know Villa hasn't been in their best form of late. I know City stomped them recently a little bit, which kind of put a damper on things. But they've been really good against top end of the table teams. I mean, the reverse fixture was a 1-0 win at home against Arsenal back in December. They beat City also in that same kind of time frame. And then, the second time against City wasn't as good. Maybe going on the road to the Emirates is going to be too much for them to handle in terms of getting a win or even a result. But, both teams play in the midweek. Both teams, again, play the midweek next week. Villa's got a pretty tough match against Lille, who's been pretty good in France this year.
No,
and
they're at home,
Arsenal,
fortunately.
they're at home. Arsenal, against Bayern drew. So I think that you'll have fairly similar fatigue. Arsenal a little more rest because they play Tuesday. Villa plays Thursday, but I think Villa at least can keep this one close, and I think that's where we were leaning with the Podlock. And I know you like to even go to the quarter goal route when you look at the spreads because you get that little extra protection if it ends up a certain way. So where are we going with this one, Nick?
Yeah, make sure, guys, if you're shop around always for lines, but if we're looking at here, you might have it just. Normally with the spread, usually it's under Asian handicap. So it would be Villa plus 1.75. It's sitting at minus 130 right now on DraftKings. So what that means is they're getting a goal in 3/4. That's a split between plus 1.5 and plus 2. So in this event, if Arsenal were to win by 2, you would get half your bet back. You'd only lose half of your bet. Obviously, if Villa lose by 1 or less, draw, a win, it's a full cash. So I think taking this line to 1.75 minus 130 represents an incredible value. I think, Arsenal should be the favorite. They very easily could win. Are they going to win by 2 or more goals? They have to prove it to us. We're getting great number on Villa here, plus 1.75.
Yeah, I like it in that sense too. Just like you said, I think Villa has enough to at least keep it to a goal. I think that's the way I'm leaning with this. I don't think they'll get run off the pitch like they did against City a couple weeks ago when we targeted them to keep it close in that one. I think this is a little more manageable for them, and we'll see how it goes. But the fact that even if they lose by 2, you get half your bet back, not the end of the world, and I think it's a solid way to play it.
For sure.
All right, so that'll bring us to the rest of our locks. We'll read off Scotty's at the end. We'll start with our 2, Nick. We'll bounce back and forth like we normally do. And we both have a play in the same match. We did this a couple weeks ago. It came back to bite us a little bit that week. We're a little more confident in this one, though. And I'm going to kick it off with Roma at Udinese, money line plus 110. my biggest regret from last weekend was not posting my winning Roma moneyline bet as a lock here. The Giallorossi got the job done against Lazio as they continue to make that top 4 push like we discussed earlier under De Rossi. Roma does have that Europa League match against Milan tomorrow, Thursday. I was recording on Wednesday, like we mentioned, with Adreano at the San Siro. Tough one, but I think there's enough depth in this side to get a win in Udine with a partially rotated side.
Yeah, listen, I'm doubling down on that. I'm taking Roma team total over 1.5. It is plus 120, everything that you said. And we spoke actually pretty lengthy about Udinese. I think they're struggling. I think this sets them on the path for potential relegation. Roma team total has been pretty near automatic for us, so we have to ride it here at plus 120. The number hasn't been that good in a few weeks, so doubling down on Roma, but I think we're both pretty confident they get the job done.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to Bundesliga with my last two. The first one is Freiburg, minus 130 at Darmstadt. Darmstadt is winless in 22 straight matches. I don't see that streak being broken here. Reverse fixture was an uncharacteristic 1-1 draws. Both sides usually hit the over 2.5 mark regularly in the league. Taking a closer look, though, at that one, Freiburg's XG was 1.64 and Darmstadt's was 0.35, scoring on their only shot on target, which speaks to the play I'm going with here. I think a similar match should play out in favor of the roadside as Freiburg needs to pile up the points to try and secure a European return. And I think this time they have enough in them to at least get multiple goals and get the job done at Darmstadt, who's been absolutely terrible this year in their, Bundesliga, promotion.
Listen, when coach goes coach worldwide, he's due for a bounce back. I love it. I'm going to play it a little safer, go with a couple of teams that have been good to us overall. Juventus money line plus 115. Derby match. They're at Torino, but we have to ride them. They've been a fucking wagon for us. We cashed on the money line last week against Fiorentina. They did have like 1,000 goals called off for offsides and VAR and this and that. But the important thing is they're generating offense when they need to. Torino has calmed down a little bit from I think pretty decent start. Juve should be up for this one. Their defenses look fantastic. Plus 115 is too good.
All right. Yeah, I mean, we don't like to root for them necessarily, especially because they're tough to watch sometimes, but they did get the job done last week. Solid number at Torino. Should be a low-scoring affair, I would think. I'm thinking you're looking at a 1-2 goal match there, so something to keep an eye on. Yeah. I'm going back to Bundesliga, like I mentioned. Stuttgart and over 2.5 goals match parlay against Eintracht Frankfurt at plus 105. After Atlanta gets down big time last weekend, I'm fading Frankfurt this weekend against my most profitable Bundesliga side from the season. I love what Stuttgart has done, and they're heading for a UCL spot next season as they've moved 7 clear of 4th with their 8-match unbeaten streak. I expect goals in this one, so I'm parlaying Stuttgart with the over 2.5 total. Get the better number. The reverse fixture is a 2-1 Stuttgart away win, and I'm expecting a similar or better result in this one.
We talked about it, man. I think Stuttgart's last loss was our pod lock. We set them on a course to just.
They've been very good this year.
No, they've been awesome, and they're fun to watch. So, good luck with that. I like it. I am going to take Bologna as my last pick. Team total over 1.5. It's minus 130 against Monza. Listen, this is kind of similar to Juve. They missed a lot of chances last week. It was a 0-0 draw. Very disappointing. I think they rebound. They had, I think, an XG, not my favorite stat, but I think the XG was well over 2 for Bologna last week. Missed a couple of sitters. We talked about the race for top 5 for Champions League. This Monza side fell apart against Napoli last week. I think they gave up 4 goals in 15 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, they were in front against Napoli in that match.
Have to have 3 points in this one. If you're Bologna, you need 2 goals to do that. Minus 130 team total.
All right. So Scotty's 3 picks. I'll give you the first one. It's Spurs money line at Newcastle plus 135. He says Newcastle stink. Their defense stinks. They have a loss to Chelsea, a draw versus Everton, and 2 very narrow wins over West Ham and Fulham in their last 4 games. Spurs should roll them by 2, maybe 3 goals easy.
Yep. Agree. His next pick, Manchester United money line at Bournemouth plus 175. This jumped right off the page to all of us. I mean, he phoned this pick in from I-95 in Massachusetts or wherever the hell he was driving from. So Bournemouth, looking like a team that was in form coming into last weekend's match. I actually joked with Scotty I might take the money line. Luton Town. And, you look at the 4 wins. Their 4 wins were against Everton, Burnley, Palace, and Luton Town, right? So a draw against Sheffield, much less impressive. And then guess what? Played Luton Town again and drop points. Could not get it over the line with this money line. So Bournemouth is not looked good. Scotty's not believing in them, thinks they're going to be in the slump in April, and United are playing well enough that 3 points on the road at plus 175 is way too good to pass up.
All right. And his last one is Brighton at Burnley. He's going with the Brighton money line. Brighton have been bad lately after dealing with a bevy of injuries, but Burnley have been dreadful in 2024 with more red cards than wins this calendar year. I think this presents Brighton with a bit of a bounce back opportunity after a tough slate the last few weeks against Liverpool, Arsenal, and Brentford. So Scotty going plus money on all his picks.
Love
he
it.
hits those. We're going to have a nice big weekend ahead of us. And continue to move forward. After a 5-5 weekend, we are looking to go back into the winning ways. So thanks again for listening. We thank Adreano again for coming on. Follow him and the Calcio guys and check out their work. And of course, we are on Twitter at KicksPicksPod. We've been posting some Champions League plays there this week. We'll probably post some Europa League as well. Yep, 3-1 this week. Going to look to try to post some more picks on there on match days that aren't maybe days where we have pod locks. We did some last week. As well. So follow us there. We're also on YouTube, of course, and all pod platforms. Thanks again for listening. We'll catch you guys next week.